Why are we reaching international students? Well, we feel that we are in a unique time here in America. Could I ask how many of you are going overseas or probably going overseas? Is this 2/3? Okay, I'm going to present this to you to think about, because the old paradigm is very different than the new paradigm. The old paradigm, if you wanted, or the construct, the way of thinking, the worldview, if you wanted to reach Muslims and other religions, you went overseas, because America was mostly like me and half the other people in this room, or maybe 2/3, just European descent. And maybe we had a couple of Jewish people in our neighborhood, but there weren't a lot of other religions. But since I was a kid, many, many, many years ago, things have really changed. And we have great opportunities here in America. So people in our ministry often talk to those that are going overseas, or have in mind, I'm going to go overseas, I can't do any ministry till I get over there. One of the things Brother Elijah in our ministry says is, wait a minute, guys. You need to work here first with Muslims. You need to be faithful in small things before you take boku bucks from the church and go overseas, where you don't know the language and you don't know the culture. If you work with Muslims here now, you know the language, you know the culture, you've got great bridges. It's much less expensive in many ways. We can talk about funding that. But the thing is, here you can be more open. And the paradigm that we use to work with Muslims here is entirely different than the paradigm you will need to use if you go as a tent maker to Pakistan or the Gulf states or anywhere else. So what you will hear me present, even what I already presented, was basically of the new paradigm working in America, being able to speak openly. Now, those of you that are going overseas, I should have asked you before the last lecture, because you will really need to be a little more cautious about using these analogies. And I think you can use them maybe in a cultural way that will actually get their curiosity going, but won't get you slammed into trouble. So you will have to think about that. Whereas when I'm using it here, I can pretty much say what I want. My main concern is not to alienate that person from my friendship by being too strong or too much at the wrong time. Okay, so with that introduction, America is flooded with students from around the world. And from the Middle East, we have something like 500,000 international students. I don't even have the most recent numbers. 1.3 million. The oh, you've already heard this. I think the Saudi number has gone down a lot, because it's gone down a lot because of the politics there. Anyway, so you heard this, and these people, the students, are going to be the future leaders of their country. Some of them will come to America, but otherwise, you're teaching the kind of the creme de la creme. They'll be taking what you teach them back. And one of the biggest terrorists actually was a student in America and didn't have a good enough experience and went overseas and actually became a powerful terrorist. So we want to get to people here, and when I see how many people are actually working with Muslims on campuses, it can be discouraging. We try to look at the glass as half full, but there's such an opportunity, because remember this statistic that most people who make a decision for Christ do it by 18 years of age. So in the university, you have people that are in that searching age group. Barbie, do you want to raise your hand? Barbie was in university when you became a believer. Because that's a time that you are open and asking questions. Most students who come here from another country do so because they are interested. They're not usually ones that hate us. They're open. They appreciate it so much if we give them attention. And for me, I'm sure you might think I'm just a really bold, brass kind of person, but I'm actually a sensitive person, which is like a reverse strength, because it's not easy for me just to go up to people. I mean, I'm a doctor. I was trained that, we're the best kind of thing. Sorry, but that's the way they teach you. So you don't humble yourself to go up to someone to share the gospel. So all of these things can be really difficult. But what I found, even though maybe I'm afraid to do it, or I'm intimidated by somebody's burqa or whatever, that if I give a little bit, I'm like, yes, help me, Lord, making it a big thing. I speak to them and they're so welcoming of that attention that I feel like, why did I have to get myself all worked up over it? It was so welcome and appreciated. So that's back to this thing here. They really appreciate it. And that's not just students. So in the university, they're supposed to be learning, and sometimes I will even tell them that and say something like, well, while you're here, since you're in the West, it's really a good opportunity to learn about Christianity as well as our culture. Freedom in America, we just talked about that. And this is an example that more than one day have I done this. You can talk to 12 Saudis and Kuwaitis in one day on campus. If you are in the Gulf, it's going to take you how many years? Like maybe after 1 or 2 years, you feel comfortable enough with someone to start doing the parables and metaphors. But the number of people you can reach in one day here is phenomenal. And I'm telling you the truth. I've done it, and you can do it. So the Great Commission now is here in America. We can go all over the world here because people from all over the world are not only in our communities, but on campuses. And in campus, there's usually a fairly dense assortment of them. But we're not the only ones who've noticed this. Our competition also notices this. And it's a battleground for souls out there. The first one, of course, is secularism. And you will find with a lot of Muslims that are attracted to learn about Christianity, they're also attracted towards secularism. They just want to get out of this life of rules and this bondage. So you are going to be competing with that. You'll be competing with other religions. This one is Chico State, a Northern California thing, where we've got Tibetan Buddhism there, showing people how to participate in this Buddhist activity. And this one, can you believe it? Because of some of my outreach practices, I've been on mailing lists, and the Muslim Student Association once sent me their agenda for the top 10 things that Muslim students should be doing. And it says right in it, the biggest opportunity for Muslims in this country to spread Islam is on the campus. Wow. And we know they're doing it too, and we know how, and we don't have time to go through that in this lecture. But Acts 17 tells us that God moves people. Have any of you taken the perspectives class? A lot of you. So Acts 17, they talk about to bring to our awareness that people are in a certain place at a certain time because God puts them there to experience something somehow, or meet people to find out about the gospel. And when you think about that, that's kind of a psychological boost for you. Remember, when you're meeting them or anybody, especially in America, remember, God brought them here for today, to talk to me. That's why they're here. That's why they went through all the craziness they went through, whether it's Syria or the boats, or being a refugee, or coming as a student because they want to learn more, or like a friend of ours, Jamal, he liked the TV show Three's Company and thought he could live with 2 girls if he came here. Whatever, brought them here, that it was actually so they could hear the gospel, and you're a big part of it because there are very few people out there doing it. So we're going to talk about 3 types of campus ministry to Muslims, because that's the name of this talk. I'm actually going to focus more on one, but I want you to just have this in mind in case perhaps God is calling you as to pursue and love Muslims in America. And I do really hope and encourage you guys, if you don't feel like this is your target ministry, do it here before you go. Be faithful in small things. Prove that you can talk to a Muslim in your own country, in your own culture, in your own language before you do it overseas. So 3 ways we can do that. One is general tract distribution. Fortunately, there are other groups out on campuses doing tract distribution. So we, in our ministry, or all of our ministries, we have very limited people, resources, time, money, all of that. But what we've found is holidays are really a good time for tract distribution. And there are a couple of reasons. One is almost everybody will take a tract. If you say Merry Christmas or a Happy Valentine's Day, whatever holiday, Happy Halloween, even MLK Day. A lot of people don't know who Martin Luther King was. If you're in that area, they will take a tract. So your general acceptance is good, so you're bringing the gospel to a lot of people. If you're in ethnic ministry, you're really hoping to reach Muslims, Hindus, and Sikhs. But when you are out there on campus that day, they are not directly feeling targeted. You're giving the word to everyone. And when you meet an international, you can stop what you're doing otherwise and connect with them. Maybe do the Esther Bridge and ask them, where are you from? I'd love to talk with you. And ask them to coffee or to an event or something. So speaking of events is a good way for campus ministry. There are a lot of Muslim events. I'll show you a picture later, but you can go to the Muslim events. As you heard from Muslim Student Association, they're actively recruiting new Muslims in America through the campuses. Go to those events, learn what they're saying, and also be there to talk to not only the Muslim students, but the American students that are thinking of converting to Islam. We consider that sort of a sideline of our ministry, is to prevent Americans from converting. There are Christian events. For example, here they have a lot of events that they invite internationals to. Or if you work in an international student ministry, you will have events. And then debates. Debates, Muslim-Christian debates, sometimes atheist Christian debates are a good place to go to. You can do it incidentally, or part of what I call Palm Project 1910, based on Acts 19:10. And I'd love to talk to you about that, but we're not going to have time today. But that is a way to be part of a whole system of campus outreach that tries to bring the gospel to every Muslim on campus and includes debates. So those two types, you've got events, you've got tract distribution, and the third one that I want to talk more about is the mentor program. And how many of you know what a mentor is? Good. See, this is an educated group. But for those of you who don't, I will read this. My first experience with mentor was when I went to university the first year. Everyone was assigned a mentor. And off the internet, a definition of it is an experienced and trusted advisor. And a second one is, or to mentor is to advise or train someone, especially a younger colleague. So I really like this term for what I encourage you to get involved in, which would be a mentoring relationship. And easily put, that might be that you could be an American auntie or uncle, or simply a friend if you're not aged like George and I, and able to be of aunt and uncle status, hopefully not grandparent status, but maybe a few of you here are. And so you could be that kind of person for them, that trusted advisor, that if they have any questions about American culture, about English, about Christianity, they go to you. How do you get involved in this? You can do mentoring through our program or others, or frankly on your own is a really good way to do it, as long as you have some training. And it's really best if you find your own student. I've found we have tried to connect people with students logistically, and also relationship-wise, it's harder. It's better if you meet that person from the beginning on your own. So now we'll talk a little bit about how to be a foreign student mentor. The goals of the mentor program. This, believe it or not, where do you think that was taken?
Dearborn?
Good guess. Okay, you're right. It's in America. This one is not. Look at this. Every person in that circle basically is Muslim, except who's that woman without a hijab in the back? That's a woman from Jordan who did a short-term mission trip with us. And she's the Christian missionary there, speaking Arabic. Look at how many people there. That is George Washington University in the DC area. And just showing you even more than that, the craziest one I've ever seen is George Mason. They took over the public meditation space and turned it into a mosque. I can tell you large stories about what happened there, but the point is there's a lot of this going on. So we want to reach these people, and what are our goals? Well, the first one is we do eventually want each of our students, our mentees, to hear the gospel. We want to take them to heaven with us. Like our friend Wissam says, if you don't want these people in heaven with you, don't waste your time preaching to them. So no, we want them with us. Okay. We want to love people, and we would like to see redemption of hearts, of families, and of cultures. Remember, we are praying every day, Lord, may your kingdom come and your will be done. So we want to see God's kingdom come into people's lives. And again, these are leaders, may they take it home to their countries too. Through the mentoring idea, if you don't want to call it a program, if it's not official, if you're mentoring, you also would like to meet other people. Someone that you just met on break here, I met at like second, third degree. A student introduced me to a friend, and that friend introduced me to that student. So, and this student I'm with here, I met through another student. So once you meet one, if you have a good friendship or relationship, then you can start to get others. And another goal is to give people material that they can take home to people that are actually trapped in their countries. And you will find it's great. A lot of times people will take Bibles, tracts, other things home to their country. So you are bringing the gospel overseas, possibly even a lot more overseas spreading of the gospel from America than if you were actually over there. You might not have been able to get a Bible out in a year if you were over there, but your students might take it back. So we talked about this before, that every interaction does these three things, one of those three things. And we're going to talk about some special bridges. Okay. So the first bridge will be to the student. That one is Chico State, yes. And we're going to talk a little bit about the concept of building a bridge. And if you go back to this picture, you notice that pretty bridge in the Japanese garden. There are two ends to the bridge. If you want a really good bridge, it needs to be stable on both ends, right? So when you're bridging to a student, we first want our end of the bridge to be secure. I am going to assume that you have had most of this training, because that has to do with your spiritual strength and development. And so I will mention them briefly instead of going into a lot of detail. But you know, prayer is important for every activity you're doing. You are basically on the front lines. It's not only in, you know, deepest, darkest mission field overseas. It's here. You will feel every bit like what you feel when you're on overseas missions. And pray like it. Recognize your own stumbling blocks, things in your life that could be a problem. Fear, thinking that a certain people group are your enemies, either as Christians or politically. Theology, some people's theology makes it hard for them to evangelize. Politics, end times, what you're thinking of the end times, or those are all things that could be stumbling blocks. So the main thing is to keep the main thing, right? There is a song about that I really like, a Christian song. So the main thing is to keep the main thing, the main thing. There are 5 L's to evangelism that we won't go into detail on, but you need to love people because they don't care what you say until they see that you care. Yeah. So you need to love, you need to learn about whatever people you're working with personally and their culture. You need to look. Remember, we're pursuing and loving. Jesus came to seek and save the lost, not to sit and wait for everyone to come to him. And we need to lean on Christ. And last, that means, you know what? It may take a long time. It may take years. So you have to hang in there. One of the women here at Horizons, I believe, said 23 years, George. I think she was from Sudan or something. 23 years from the first time she heard the gospel till she became a believer. So you have to laugh. Now, these are character traits. I really think this is important, at least that you see this. Why? Because Mom is going to tell you there will be days like this, and it won't be easy. So, and things that are different to our culture, like hospitality. You may think you're being really hospitable. You won't be hospitable enough. To be generous, to be friendly, to put yourself out a little bit out of your comfort zone, that you might humiliate yourself or do something stupid. To show interest in other cultures, people, activities. Be flexible, be modest. You need to be open to different ideas and possibilities. A natural gospel, like we talked about with the salt shaker. Some caution, a lot of forgiveness, sympathy and empathy, and you're going to have to overlook stuff, and you may end up needing to give some counsel. We'll talk about that a little bit more. Things you're going to need to overlook. Gossip. They're going to talk about you behind your back. Just accept it. Some of it will be good. It won't all be good, but you have to accept it. Refused invitations. The way I look at it is, if on a friendship level, if I ask someone to do something with me and they don't want to, I might ask them a second time. That's it. You know, if they don't want to be my friend, I get the idea. But when you're in ministry, you have to put up with a lot of rejections and refusals, and don't take it personally. You just, if you've met someone, especially with a student, you know, they have exams, they have lots of things going on in their life, and there may be gaps of months between times that you see them. Unreturned calls, imposition. You'll think that something's going to happen, and somebody shows up with 5 of their friends, or they take for granted that you're going to do this or that. You might feel like you're being taken advantage of, either your hospitality, your money, anything. And you probably will feel abused. Expect all that. And then when it happens, you won't care as much. Okay, how to meet Muslim students. Again, an anointed picture from downstairs. You can meet them really well through personal contacts. If you are a student, you'll know people that are students with you. Personal contacts are great. If not, there are events, festivals, student ministries like ours, like Horizons, International Bridges. How many of you know of other student ministries, international ministries? You've probably, maybe you volunteered with some. On campus directly, like we talked about, the outreach tracks, just walking around and trying to meet people. Or around town, you might find them especially in a university area, like if you go up on the hill. Here, sometimes I've done that around the campus. For example, on a day where the campus is closed, and you can meet students there in Starbucks or just walking around. Ethnic markets are good, stores. Hookah bars, kind of, and we can talk about that. Muslim events are very common. So if you're living near a university, you can try to find out. By walking on the campus, you'll see posters for them. You can go, usually on Tuesdays, they have a booth on most campuses where they're inviting people to events. So there are both kinds of events. A closed event means you're not invited to go into it, but if you know they're having their Friday prayer meeting and you're in the area, you can talk to them when they come out. Okay, now bridging to the student, remember that Jesus' method was different with different people. And as you've already heard, every person is different, every Muslim is different. So keep that in mind. Also keep in mind shyness. Don't take that personally either. it doesn't necessarily reflect their estimation of you or the relationship. How would you feel if you were speaking in Arabic? I think most of us in here would be a little shy. Always keep in mind that there is some expression, and give people the benefit of the doubt, because they may clumsily say something that sounds like they're insulting you. They don't mean it that way at all. It's just that their English isn't that refined. So hang in there. They do respect endurance. I've had Muslims that came to Christ tell me that, Cynthia, we couldn't believe what you put up with from us all these years, literally. Remember, we are here to serve, not to be served. You're not here for them to make you feel good like you're the best American, the best Christian, whatever. No, we're here to serve. But occasionally, we need to let them do something for us. That is affirming. And so if they want to buy you a coffee now and then or give you a gift or something, yeah, you should allow that. But it's not like, like you are to be served. So that's what you do on your end of the bridge, how you get your attitude in mind and what to expect. Now, to make their end of the bridge more secure, they need to know that you love them and smile at them, show an interest so that they will see that you do care. Find ways to identify with them. I find commonly, in fact, just a few days ago, I met a Sudanese Muslim, and that was one of the initial bridges I used with her, was talking about modesty and certain traditions that Christians have more in common with Muslims than general America. So try to find something you can identify with them. Maybe it's a class or an interest. A lot of times it could be food, if you like the food from their country. You might need to repair. Some previous Christians may have done stupid things or things they've experienced in their culture or in the past or whatever. I don't personally necessarily apologize for the Crusades. That's a whole other topic, and the Christians didn't start it. But, so I wouldn't bring up anything that needs to be repaired, but you may find that they need some repair. And spend, that means spend your money, your time, your love. And it's kind of for those of you in business, it's a long-term capital gain. Okay, so you're expecting what? Expect language barriers, cultural barriers, expect stretched envelopes, yours and the students. Expect you will be misunderstood sometimes. You might need to restate things and clarify. There will be ups and downs in their interest. And as I mentioned before, sometimes because of their English, you feel like you need to do all the talking, and you're trying to get, very subtle clues from them. Are they interested, or what are they thinking? Strong bridges, so we've got their end and our end. If you want to make that a strong bridge, things that will help you share life makes it stronger. If you help them, if you meet a need, if these are all kinds of things that you can help them with. And having fun together, having some good shared life experiences. If they respond to your jokes, if they understand enough English, yeah, you can do that. And if they don't, you can just smile and try to make it a pleasant experience being with you. A lot of these things are going to work not just with students. These are part of our basic building bridges training. We're going to talk about a few practical connections. We're not saying everything has to be a step-by-step thing, but when you have tools and you kind of know what they are, you can think, oh, I could use this now. So we're going to talk about the word bridge, Esther bridge, we already mentioned, and a Nehemiah bridge. So let's talk about some word bridges. Words would be, in this context, things we say, not necessarily the Word of God. So communicating. When you're communicating with international students or anyone in America that's learning English, you want to speak slowly and clearly. That seems obvious, but believe me, people don't do it. And you see, I speak quickly when I am teaching. On the television show, I try specifically to speak slowly and clearly, to use small words, avoid slang. Often you will need to ask people if they understand you. Some cultures, people do not want to admit it. There's a lot of shame in some Middle Eastern and Asian cultures. So repeat things, ask, be patient, and remember, you also are a learner. These things, I know we've got a lot of great things to cover, but I will try to just emphasize some of the more important things. How many of you know how to say Assalamu alaikum? Okay, good. If you don't, we're not going to take time to practice it, but that is your best word bridge for meeting someone, because they immediately know that you know they're Muslim, you know a little about their culture, and you respect them. So do learn how to say that well. Now, we talked earlier about, at the beginning, about how my family doing international business has been part of my platform. And if we get down to the lab, which we probably won't have time for, and you will probably need to do this on your own, but develop your platform. And that will be talking about why it is that you are interested in talking with this person. They're going to want to know, how come this American talks to me and nobody else does? What is their angle? And you need to have a reasonable answer to give them. So I suggest you look at your life. What experience have you had with internationals? Right now, you are all basically proclaimed. I'm proclaiming you, probably George already has. You are now students of Islam, maybe even of Arabic. So you're studying Islam. Okay, so work on your platform, whatever that is. If you need help with, I'll offer to give you help with a couple of things. I'll help you build your platform. The other thing is, if there's somebody and you don't know how to bridge to them, for some reason, God's given me a really good ability to find a bridge with almost anybody of whatever age, language, or culture, and I can give you some ideas and that you can use tomorrow to bridge with someone. So I'm happy to help you with that. Okay, so complement their culture, be honest and open. You want to be like real. You want to be who you are. But you don't have to say everything. And I'm going to give you some topics that I have found are really good for discussion with international students and to some degree all immigrants. Language and school questions. You know, we've talked about tutoring, English a bit. General, about family, life, weather in different areas. America, I found that really good because you can bridge from that to the gospel. And you talk about how it was founded by Christians, but you know, they're thinking all Americans are Christian because in their culture it's all Islam. And you explain why it's not that way. Or you can also say, we see some things in America that you as a Muslim and I as a Christian don't really appreciate, but America was founded on the idea that people can choose. And if you can choose good, you can also choose bad. And so you can go into that and you can talk about why we are given the ability to choose in America and how that relates to the gospel and God wanting us to choose to love him and things like that. So the America Bridge is really a good one. We talked about using names, places to share. American hobbies and activities. Holidays are great. You can talk about cultural differences. What do you do in your culture and this is what we do. And then religion, comparing religions. So these are specific things you can say in comparing cultures. What differences do you see? I think this is really helpful. Well, you've been in America for a year now. Maybe you can share with me what are the differences you see between where you lived before and America. And then from that, you can explain from the Christian point of view why that might be. Or you could say, what I've noticed is, we call that turnabout. I heard your previous lecturer talking about something about coming at it the other way around, and we also like to do that, come at it from a different way. So if you are asking them a question, then it's only fair that you get to share your point of view also. So merge into differences in religion when you can. And other questions you can ask. What would you like to talk about today? What are you studying this week? When is your next day off? Are you planning any trips? Those are all very natural and good questions that help you connect. Now, in your relationship as a mentor, remember that's trusted advisor. You are advising on many things, but you need to know your limitations. Anybody who's strong, like in a medical specialty, you need to know what you know and what you don't know, what you're good at, what you're not good at. And that is really important to help you master what you're doing. The same thing with this. You are not a professional in many areas, especially here we're talking about psychology, because a lot of issues will arise. Struggles with American lifestyle, discrimination, ostracization, morality, fears, financial needs, women's problems, which we talk more about in a different seminar. But remember that some of these will be beyond you. But you will get into a lot of topics that you can discuss also. Now, we talked about the Esther Bridge, which is to asking to meet them individually, usually individually soon. It may also be at a meeting. The NEHEMIAH Bridge is where you're building. Okay, you're building that. And this is a student from Saudi Arabia, another Algerian Muslim, French Algerian Muslim, and someone from my family. And so you're building that bridge with your time, your money, your strength. You're really putting into it. Other suggested activities you can get involved with students, there are many. Of course, with the Esther Bridge, you can go out. You can go to campus events together. The international student festivals are a common one to go to. Go do sports together. If you find out they like sports and you do, that's really great. Actually, shopping, some of the students, we've gone on San Francisco shopping trips, traveling, dancing. You can see that's from one of our dances. This is girls only, women. We say, no drugs, no weapons, no men. And then a lot of the young women that otherwise are very shy, if there are no men around, they take off their scarves and we just have a lot of fun. You can have discussion groups or conferences, and that we've found has been a pretty good thing. With women's, you can talk about women's rights, or how can American women help Middle Eastern women, or how can we learn about each other. And you can ask them to church, especially at holidays, or to Bible study for students. So holidays are great. Both those students are now believers. Traveling, having fun. Helping. This is an Iraqi family that I was helped by. That's some people working with our ministry. And bridge busters, things that cause a lot of trouble. Number one up there is dress. For me, that's always a challenge because, as you know, there are many different kinds of Muslims, and we want to, in every way, reach all kinds of people and not be offensive. The good news with students is you're really not in as much trouble as with some of the other ethnic groups because they are a lot more open. So I kind of take my cue from the student I'm with. If I'm with a student from a very westernized country where they're not totally covered, I will be a little more liberal than if they are not. But usually just dressing like an immodest American works. This is a whole seminar on its own, which hopefully you're getting somewhere else. But also watch for appearing judgmental. I've also received comments because in some of the cultures there's a lot of criticism. And if you're not being critical or judgmental, they will actually notice that. And I have had feedback that we notice you don't gossip about people. And of course, as Christians, we don't even think about it. Maybe it's just certain things that we're practicing in our Christian walk is different. Avoid, again, politics and end times theology. Be careful with your behavior between sexes, especially the guys. This is a big discussion with the women. But for the younger women, yeah, you need to be careful with the guys. The people my age, the mom's age, it's really not such a big deal. But always keep that in mind as something to be careful with. If I am involved with a guy, like some guy I meet here or on a campus, eventually I try to connect him. Even though I'm old enough to be his mom, I will connect him with another guy. And also be careful about pushing too soon, too much too soon. This is really important to know. It's, again, one of those Mama told me there'd be days like this, but there will be rough patches, okay? This means just expect it. In every relationship, you're going to have on again, off again. It's not always going to be easy or perfect, but don't panic, don't give up, be faithful. I mean, there were many times, say with one person over 6 years that came to Christ, many times I was thinking, oh my goodness, that could be the end of it. Well, if something happened that's a misunderstanding, try to restore it. Sometimes you just need to wait till the heat dies down. But I want to give you good examples and bad examples. Okay, so if you're at a rough patch and you feel like they don't want to talk to you anymore, they're not returning your calls, if it's a misunderstanding, something you did wrong, you can try to correct it. But a lot of times it won't be that. It will be option 2, good. Something that you said or did hit home and they really have to think about it. Maybe you challenged them in a certain way and they just are processing it. They don't feel comfortable with you right now. So it's not always bad when you hit those rough patches. I think there were a couple of things I wanted to say about challenging. This is an important one, is that initially we emphasize in relationships building bridges and preaching Christ. But you will be surprised at how soon you are going to be told that your Bible is corrupt or that Muhammad is the last prophet. Why don't you follow him? We follow your prophets. So sooner or later, you're going to need to cover these things. And it really helped me to learn this, another thing from Brother Elijah of our ministry, said that if a Muslim doesn't know that Islam is wrong, that stronghold is so tight that they really won't have the strength to leave it. So sooner or later, they do need to know that. And you'll find with the students that you will hopefully have a lot of opportunities to share things that they can see, not only the truth of the love of God, but the truth of the darkness that they have been in. So let's just go to the end. We are going to need to skip security. Hopefully you dealt with that, and resources you've dealt with. So now for the lab, we are going to finish the lecture, but these are things you can work on. You can think about where you could meet Muslims. Even if you're going overseas, what can you do in America? What challenges do you foresee that you might run into? Choose a platform. Work on your platform. I mean, who are you? Why are you doing this? How are you authentic? And practice some things that you might actually say as a bridge to meeting the Muslim or connecting with them, and as a bridge to get to some point of the gospel. Either the whole gospel, which we use Path of the Prophets method, but some way to connect to the gospel, or little bits of salt and truth and light, like we talked about from the salt shaker. Okay, that ends our formal discussion.